So welcome. Tonight this is going to be presented via Zoom, and it will be available on our website afterwards. Linda Mussman and I, Claudia Bruce, welcome everyone here tonight to join us in person and via Zoom. Linda and I are co-directors of Time and Space Limited, a creative space in Hudson, New York that hosts many forms of art, including, but not limited to, cinema, live theater, music events, simulcasts from the Metropolitan Opera and the National Theatre of London, art installations, an active book space and stuff store, as well as our series of literature and poetry readings. TSL was founded 49 years ago in New York City and has just entered its 31st year in Hudson. Next year, we will be celebrating our 50th anniversary. We want to gratefully thank all of our donors and members for their support, which make programs such as this one today possible. We also want to thank our tech person, Teo Camporeale, for getting this program up and zooming. A recording will be archived on our website at www.timeandspace.org. And so this evening we're going to have three poets reading. I'm going to read about them now, and they're going to follow one after the other. The first is Kimberly Alidio, is an educator, historian, and author of 4 books of poetry, including Why Letter Ellipses, Once, Teeth, Bones, Coral, a Lambda Literary Award finalist, and After Projects, The Resound. Her most recent book, Teeter, won the Night Boat Poetry Prize and will be published in the fall of 2023. She lives on unceded Munsee Mohican lands in New York's Upper Hudson Valley and teaches in Bard's Language and Thinking Program, Prison Initiative, Early College, and Milton Avery Graduate School of the Arts. The second reader will be Miriam Atkin. She's a writer based in the Catskills. Her work has been largely concerned with the possibilities of poetry as a medium in conversation with avant-garde film, music, and dance, and has lately extended to being co-founded of Pinsapo, an art and publishing collective of international artists across disciplines. Stacy Szymaszek has written 7 books of poetry. The Pasolini book has just been released by Goliath Books. Famous Hermits and 3 Novenas, a chapbook, will also be published later in 2022. She's the recipient of the 2014 New York Foundation for the Arts Fellowship in Poetry and a 2019 Foundation for Contemporary Arts grant in poetry. From 2007 to 2018, she was the director of the Poetry Project at St. Mark's Church in New York City. She currently lives in unceded Munsee Mohican lands, where she works as a development manager for a biodynamic organic farm. And so we will begin with Kimberly.
Hi, it's great to see everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to Linda and Claudia. This is the poetry reading that is the closest to my house in a long time. So I'm going to read several pieces across 4 of my books, and I guess maybe it'll be evident that it moves from the word to the sentence. Hands hold, floats, wears, ring, caresses, lists, ingredients. Earnest belief, slender, pinky, pretty nail, unruly, sleepwalk, tempo, kitchens, veranda. Words, departure, arise, atonal, durational, buttoned, wrist, heart, tick, tick, extending. Hand falls, exact, measure, ambient, waves, turmeric, return. Forget, rewinds, left, index, finger, halo, recall, fist, eyes squeezed. Dream, recount, sways hand. Flowers, shoulder, roll, circle, thumb, index, finger, precise, crooked smile. Propelling diaphragm, depth, here, bodies, vibration, chest, nape, swirls, follicular, ears, coming, right eye, tickled, sinus, tags, wrong, ending, say, watch, porn, sound. Trees, whisper, brethren, transfer, arrive, upstream, throat, tiniest house, horizon, heavy, counterpoint, imprints, lament, eating sweet. Unbind, hear, sense, summons, ease, center, mistaken planet, bright queries, track, mild, silent, profane prayer. Displaced from situatedness, dispersed across several continents, there won't be a gathering. Finite form embodies the place where one is now by indeterminate accident, a desire to mother. A body gains transparency. Landscape appears in a body-framed portal. Emplacement of displaced migrants detained. Alien landscape reconstitutes alien body. What if one makes a new past? Body mirror. Landscape absorbs alterity, hot-tempered, all night, mimetic, linguistic, new facts of not belonging. Beyond geospatial mapping, I'm gonna look for my body, yeah? I'll be back like real soon. Thank you. No, that's great. This next poem is titled with a line from Banu Kapil's Ban and Banlieue. I wanted to write a book that was like lying down. I wanted to write a book that was like lying down. A feeling has passed before a charted present, a possible failure, a possibly expired desire. A simile is no longer in force in making meaning of a concrete object. A direct object is possibly imaginary. A sentence wants never to end. A sentence wants never to end is a paraphrase, perhaps, of a sentence that appeared. A myth makes a yoking of the concrete, a simile not in force, a presumed minor literature. Not eliciting a response worthy of catching what goes through me and making of it something I share is an older memory of precocious childhood, what passes. Through me as I read, I wanted to write a book that was like lying down is a sense of Whitman, upended and extinguished, then replaced in repressed anger and polite vengeance. I wanted to read a book that was like blank, a polite vengeance, replacement of Whitman's body with his opposite, possibly expired desire. A feeling has passed before a charted present. The sentence reverses the law, a concrete object be knowable and bounded, and instead be made relatable by yoking the concrete object to an unknown. Some unknowns are closer to being known. This particular unknown signals the presumed minor literature on raped and violated citizenry. This particular unknown wants to undo knowing by upending and extinguishing, then replacing in repressed anger and polite vengeance. Response barely stands, a certain observation of an indefinite object, a memory, uncertain about a sentence, a body subject to forces not legislated to pass over the same. So the book exists only to signal a failed book. The sentence exists only to signal an unwritten sentence. What passes through me is a sentence demanding a law, making it unpassable and interminable. A tapeworm, a pinworm, a hookworm, a threadworm, a fluke, so the body is prone. A fluke a sentence wants never to end, a threadworm, a bookworm, a pinworm, a tapeworm, a demand for law barring its passage and end, a sentence only to signal an unwritten. The book wants a performance that undoes a presence by upending and extinguishing, etc., etc. A book has passed into a cosmic origin, like a person in an ancient pose that concretizes the myth of a body like mine, subjected to forces not supposed to pass and legislating a body symbolic of mine be impassable and interminable, prone even if seated to type this, aging, secure. The book wants that body's undoing into a body that is like a book that was like lying down. Autohistoriography of Arrival at a River. This is a piece I wrote when I got here. Another marvels at the eros, dirty humor luxuriating. Connectivity issues keep nodding. Is this too granular? Unsent tweets, a chapbook. Peanuts kids hearing only trombone whenever adults speak and holding polite conversation anyway is my gay awakening. Stacy feeling Stajek and Sasha Bart walk into a bar. Without language stuck again, how I can't help but want a niche, spontaneous movement against talk like structural violence is a pain in the ass drag on everyone's desires. A symptomatic interregnum between online gigs, hard to catch up with how well things can go and invite presence. One reads down a list of slimy things for ecological immersion. Another goes for libidinous energy, not semantically but vernacular and promiscuous. Living is so full-time. Enchantment by houseplants risks staring into tiny spindled abysses, tugging at all the weights in the throat and intonation. I decided a thing to do, then spent a week buying the wrong SD cards and USB cords for a monster doc for the monster times, some AV akin to phonetic poetry, some overdubbing, something about the mouth. This is resolutely distinct from the sentence, from Susan Howe and end-stop lines stack like bricks, and enjambed lines take shape with mortar and hinge. Visuality scores clauses. S makes a new form to avoid punctuation. The standard architectures of the page, the start and end of a unit of meaning, and the movement from into another or next movement unit or next unit of meaning. North of new kinds of poems, York, city, and upstate, glorified weekend newbies like me in femme plaid, pulling weeds under another poet's weeping fur, neighboring constant construction crews, beeping 2 weeks late, planting another poet's cuttings, oh damned deet, the itching. But I wanted to tell you something here about collaborative writing or academia and suspicion. I think it was about collective autobiography, how I see you now. I dropped dried petals in houses for you both, having never before been so speculative, desperate to catch up with a free person I am now. How dare I? Utterly alone, finally, suddenly made from the diaspora of queer friendships which loved me here, then left. How to bear it as a person supposed to be bordered by autobiography? I can't. I'm just so now, no story. Human as praxis, as Sylvia Wynter said in language I can't understand or thought I hadn't. If I lay them out, surfaces of narrative, the brink of, what if I wrote with the videos and images of August, the sounds of July? I'm unfamiliar with this sound that you're making. in between things, okay? Like at the end. I'm going to end. Thank you again. I look forward to Miriam and Stacy. Once in a while, I live out a story, an arc of time, born out of and meant for transaction, for payoff. Once I said to you, I could be, have been, am a thrill seeker and a coward, seduced and conditioned by a specter of art world opportunity, as speedy and infinite as blank, doing what needs to get done, letting a cumulative drive determine who and what shapes the work, all just to see where a path goes through a public art world. But would I then lose the thread of our subtle and dignified friendship, grounded in a particular anti-institutional poetics of being on the wrong side of history and war, in our art dyke genderqueer life of twinned obscurity autonomy? And would I, have I, succeeded a bit more if I had the knack for making a spectacle of the work, so it projects a persona compelling patronage and support in a combination of evergreen and ad hoc ways that make it impossible to go on just hanging around, thinking and being in some kind of open conspiracy to persist in thinking and being? And to this you replied, I love poets. I hate celebrities. Thank you.
So first I'm going to read some poems that are very, very new. Some written in the last week. Okay, this is called Days of Fruit. Only once a black censure converged on the hammock spinning I could manage a day. How sad an unmoving bird is a spoon. Together, placing a smudged script on the dent of your monogrammed cap. And here the mouth hangs in resolve. Picture stomping it, and at last rolling around together, bumping into a clutter of plastic, the concession for which a small stone is always hounding me. Between the wainscot, the milk snake, the extraction, and the cob is a dodecahedron, teal spliced with shards of red, carpeting the end of a nomadic conversation. Settle down in your windbreaker and be a shape. I accumulate a scene with its back turned, and the inhalation draws particulate berries. A lot of action. I just rode a fleep away from time, returning with balmy scallions woven into a basket. A spanking new apartment is accumulating inside. I have a souvenir. The well at the far corner of both your eyes is bellowing. Do you want the view? We sat there yesterday, and there, just where the sweat beads on the pad of my finger, and during every dumb commercial I drop the well and break it. Coolest cars, cystic archways in the knee, a felted abrasion, a series of hats. Everything grows fast. You could almost sit for an hour, watch them growing, and there'd be a lot of action. Downstairs, friends and family haven't been born yet, beforehand lulled by the sounds we're making, or rather the magnets in our cabinet doors that draw them gently closed. will always put me to sleep. Back in a flash, the bark will show a bear has rubbed itself there, and back to the flying jeep. In office. The blank disclosure has pulled itself from a bed, dappled, joiner, creek, streaming abundantly socked, the life of Jillian's, aloft in that heliotropic derangement house, a striated number. The weather in which a soapy window strokes a window and a sotted impact rests, animating with beaks and pitches the abstract carriage of simply a one. We sink furniture's extremity down in finite supper worship, dirt and dog and uterine, till the lake fills a sphere and all upper crust hair, twined, ravels without reserve, and she's etched in the road, inclination drawing the filaments taut far from her brain, a radiant X with no detectable hands. An ache or assembling. A meta-about face doddering in a parcel, which is in turn in a place, hit and wet and convex full. The frame was full of a heart and its blood. A dull topic was chittering. Sarah, I couldn't read the words. The consumptive down the street has a cat with a marigold pith it bears at night shamelessly. And there's a doctor in my house. He tries to explain. Here, the preface and the organ meet. The mercurial on hit a man. A hectoring safety engaged, dungeony listening, and all sheets of paper aligned squarely on the plank. Impressive. It is April 21st. Metals clack under a resplendent sun. Leggy nasturtiums rising from a dank risotto base. A worldwide double divergence, to each weird member their own. Hobby horse, kite fight, homunculi, tacit points, French skipping, till a white-hot ray of afterlife slices the event in quadrants. And at last the ducks have found their groove, saggy messages and the stoniest foot, arranging themselves obligingly as today's speaker ahems into the mic. Immediate is a wrong word for the miracle, more like a feathery jacket that slowly elected to sweat itself out of me, and I found myself wearing the most glamorous outfit, and the glutinous tide is coming in, as the last macular degeneration shakes an old penny from the ground and sucks it. The day is an abomination, and everyone's neck grows long as a woolly bear. If they look my way and I say go, disperse, you gross remains, all the trembling aspens, mastheads, and rose hips who've appeared for the reunion, a veritably humping melee. The drink. I have asked for jagged contact, and that a pick between a cub, palm under palm, the face, the plate wet itself, a docent scraping, the knees against a wall of gridded alien fleshing. Whenever the drain wriggles under a storm, the immaculate dorsal lines trail a wrong manner of contact. Swath baking, the dry managerial scores in white upon white, under the cold bed, stopping and stopping often. Long last the drink is the figure of the philosopher in the room, nutted in retracting china. The female anthropologist. The center is preceded by a raft of things, here and there a moat, hardly particulate flange metrics, stripping rank and avian. Rather treacherous, I'm afraid, to hold volatile riverbeds in ornamental beakers. Everyone died who procured from the post this brown bag of miscellany upon opening. The wood and my legs a proper tangle and an arrowing, as if one softened body could hold in all the frames when it barely can stand to recall its DOB. In the wilderness, a pointed pair of eyes will blight the whole expanse. And again, the moment, a colossal army of droplets raging down a vinyl eave. A divine platter of charred meats, the unveiling. Only to stop, the matrimonial wax kenning up and up a flavored prescience. The diaphragmatic light dozes forever in cancer. The if you hear a rampling, unearth it, dragging strains of hair. That morning at the movies we hit a key, and the falcon is gone absolutely from your face. So these are much older poems, and I apologize to those of you who have already seen me do this. Mobile. A caustic smell is a cavity or a condescension like H2O and an acre out here in Fredonia. On this day of seminal work, en route you, Alice Blue, mosh your imperceptibly furred fucking wig off. Illustration, emanation, and displacement. Handsome the animal, Göring the baby. Sculpting the peaks of an M out of pure coagulated gumption. Lodge. The stroke of a brush cresting until the renaming. Presently all the Falun Gong from all the minutest declensions convene on a middle-high German Platt. A number of globules lie tucked away, fearful in the swell. One shady brook spoke bluntly, defending the company's aim to offer signature experiences in a roundabout staccato. For sure the wave ripped fast through the village, shanties tumbling, stinging plumes of wing nuts and bolts and blank and blank and blank. A notion comes a great distance, all abstractedly fingered in the buttery spinning cone of Mont Tremblant. Flee. He slips a dark dress over his head, and the folds tumble down in finely articulated shapes of words, a grave, unreadable force suspended in grinning. The crepuscular third act, dedicated neither to posterity nor pleasure, continues to mystify audiences. On the wall behind her bed hung a faded photo of her dashing dimorph. I was a flying fish riding on hair. clump foot. In the jutting woods, the fitful interference of stray lines makes new ways to signify feeling on the twisted faces of the copulating freaks. A springy white knob, disrupting a smooth plane of flesh, covers what is worse, a well full of moistened beads. Feet fasted to the muck, the speckled pigeon's flight will bring the bog to Shehakim. Kneel naked on cracked ice to coax the pelt. A hot knife hand rising up from the core draws all the world in. Tit. Appetite is white. Young and unique Christian daycare serves a small group of half-open lilies napping on the linoleum. A humming plane surveys the wreckage. The swollen arc of this tale houses rocks within stones. Every day on the way out the door, she straps to her head an imperceptibly furred convexity. My vision wandered to the right and landed on the farthest thing I could see through the fog. A brutalist apartment tower, its foundation of concrete piles driving deep into the densest layer of earth. This struck me as an object aesthetically at odds with its environment, but materially one with it, fused in place, its boxy terraces distending loosely in the wind. The sun is divine in its promise to hold more light than it could ever contain. Okay, that's all I got. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you to Claudia and Linda and my brilliant co-poets tonight. Goliath's Books recently published my book, the Pasolini book, and it represents more than 20 years of writing on the figure of Pasolini, writing on, next to, through, I'm not sure what the right word is, with, for those of you that don't know, Pasolini was an Italian filmmaker, poet, intellectual, murdered in 1975, still a cold case. And in the early aughts, a friend handed me Roman Poems, a collection of his work that City Lights published, thinking I would like it, and I was like, it's okay. But I kept going back to it, so there was something very compelling to me, and I decided to kind of embark upon a project. At the time, I couldn't have guessed that it would be, it would hold my attention for so long, but I always make the joke when I'm holding it, you'd think it would be longer. It's seems rather modest for 2 decades. But anyways, it's kind of hard to figure out how to read from. There's a first section where I rewrite Roman poems as myself. So it follows exactly the order of his poems and appropriates the titles of his poems, but they're my poems responding to his poems. Then there's a prose section, and then in 2020, I decided I would do Roman poems again. So I did another pass of rewriting Roman poems as myself. And the locations, I just think it's interesting. I started the book in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, wrote the prose in New York City, and finished the book in Tucson, Arizona. Okay. Diary. In the anxiety of my transgression, I have never been touched by remorse. Here with you in half light, I feel no remorse for the way we use the government's tongue, but I do feel anxious, as one who will never grow up feels anxious about who will care about them. Here with you making this movie, I don't think we care about each other because we are outlaws and there is no way for us to care for long. Don't you think? Diary, the second version. I solved the problem of the young queer woman on the plane by telling her I used to have a very social job. What no one knew, including myself, was that when it was over, I'd go back to being an underachiever in a westward town, but this time without anxiety. A famous artist of the Lower East Side erased his early years as a poet, yet I had thought of him every day in a way I only thought about poets as I passed by his old address, a movie theater for years now, splendid day after splendid day. May 6, 2010. It was just after All Souls Day, November 2nd, 1975. I was 6. The man I would become was murdered outside of Rome. Images of his crushed body broadcast worldwide, and no one in my house noticed or could have cared. My family lived in a suburb separated from others by wide belts of undeveloped land. It was organized by section, and each section was designated a letter that every street name began with. We lived in the G section on Glenflora Drive. The alphabetical logic was meant to give the families living there a sense of natural order and local cohesion. It felt like a gated community, but there was no need for a gate. Trespassers were always immediately detected, observed. The gate existed in my subconscious, and though I never got close enough, I knew an electric current ran through it. Prayer to my mother. Second version. It's hard to find the voice of the child at this stage in life, and what has been at the heart of my sorrow feels like a long, dog-eared book I'll never read again. Is it so terrible to say aloud, I had the will to replace you? But even that condemned me to a kind of solitude that preserved an underlying commitment to you, an infinite hunger for more than companionship with bodies housing lost souls as the only way to feel alive, the only form I knew. But now that is over, and as new mothers are made, you and I survive in the confusion. A life reborn outside of mothering, outside of reason. I cannot beg you or anyone not to desire death during this horrific time. As your mother took her leave in a hearse with an Italian flag that would not have been among her wishes, her rigored hand cocked in dissent, covered with lace. I can see we're all here together now and in every future September. Pasolini cast Susanna, his mother, as the older Mary in his 1964 film, The Gospel According to St. Matthew. A dark veil accentuates the structure of her face, which is the structure of his face. I've read books that say that this is Pasolini likening himself to Jesus, but when I saw it, I felt that it was about Pasolini using film to visually connect himself to his ideal women. his mother, the mother. I think this because in his unfinished posthumously published text, Petrolio, Carlo has to become a woman to attain authenticity. Pasolini and his mother were a couple. They shared a household until his death. To break their symbiotic relationship would have rendered her life force inaccessible to him, but to sustain it required sacrifice. When I became Pasolini, I could not abide by this conflict. There were some things that I wanted to be discovered, and I knew that my blank book could function as a depository for messages to my mother. I wrote in all caps, "I have a theory about my mom and dad," but then didn't write anything else. I lacked the vocabulary and the skill to synthesize what I saw, but I wanted her to know that I knew things about her too. I slowly became a better writer and was able to compose short letters in my book to a Dr. Paulina Kernberg, whose column, Good Vibrations, I followed in Dynamite magazine. I addressed these letters to her and put the envelopes in our mailbox, but I either didn't know or didn't care that letters needed stamps. They met their intended recipient when my mother removed them, read them, and destroyed them. At school, we had our recess on the blacktop lot. I usually just sat on the curb by myself and waited for the bell to ring. Once I saw my mother standing alone off in the distance, watching me alone. To the red flag. You were waved in a fight for the 8-hour workday when that seemed humane. Strung behind medieval ships to signal, we'll fight to death. Your red has been the blood of calves. Red flag, they're packing our wounds with money. Old wounds will bleed pennies. No, they are wounding us and stowing money, replicating wound banks. My shoulder is a hedge of evergreens between their party and my pantry. In a pinch, you are the aftermath of a dry nose, and the poorest can wave you. Fragment, to death, to Pasolini. I was born to an eventful summer. A man with money got away with manslaughter of a woman, and not many years later, money murdered you and got away in one of its many sports cars. I've tried to understand you circling me, sometimes an aura, other times an astral speck. Sometimes my peers leave with you and family doesn't want to talk. The person is gone with their story, and we coagulate in the wake of their light, independently, and I come no closer. I return to your poetry, an isolated, bad-mouthed woman, free of most norms, including denial of you. You are not close to me now, but within. I make you deal with the crown in an angry state, a livid poetry. Crown my liver. Every real act of the world is a great poem. Am I healthy? My body does as it wishes. Believe in its sovereignty soundtrack. Teenagers in black who laugh at adults who collude with rich murderers. I became aware of my own mortality when the man I would become was found murdered on the beach in the port town of Ostia. I didn't think my desire could ever lead to other bodies until I found out the man I would become, whose body was found battered on wasteland near the sea. On the morning of November 2nd, 1975, on the Roman littoral of Ostia, in an uncultivated field in Via del Idroscalo, a woman, Maria Teresa Lollobrigida, discovered the dead body of the man I would become. Friulian paintings. Coatless in the creosote air, I was aimless on my evening walk, my breath humid in my mask, walking. till I had a sense that I no longer existed, or I still existed in other cities too. Imagination in air, held in clouds, the smell of imagination hitting asphalt, opening passages. I was on my evening walk, kicking up dust, the sounds of people celebrating in the streets of New York City ringing in my ears. A happy horn blew in the distance, the sky phosphoreal. Neighbor talked on speaker phone outside, airing her legal troubles and smoking, casita after casita. If we lived in this casita. Maneuvered around a beat-up paddle cactus on the path, lavender patches and black, undid every defense of the heart. I did notice her things on the ledge, moved after her last political wish was half realized. The leaves of elders rustled all around. I read Friulian willows as widows, whose wood does not drop in storms. Think of Kollwitz, who knew how to use wood and ink to depict held anguish. The mountains in every direction are stark, provide no narratives and countless perspectives. I turned west and remembered our pagan evening, that yielding of ours, a festive measure of childish heart that made the city seem like an everyday piazza. Our love was so hot and wise, it galvanized us into hags. With 3 nights of perfect knowledge of each other, followed by ages of getting to know each other. Mental drives through eastern corridors of blood-red webbed sugar maples. I still try to look my best in soft pants, dress for a work day at my desk, readying me for a walk. The news still shocks me. I am still falling from grace. Smells of people's suppers penetrated my mask, tugged forward by puffs of newly legal weed. Shrouded porch-side plosive clusters, canned salmon, coffee with plum notes, rice and cocoa. The wind felt other planetary, displacing dirty earth air, dotting it with energy to upend the mortal stasis. Each side licks their fingers and holds to the sky. There is no damp light of the sea east of me, nor deep blue of the lake, but this mountain that looks as if you could unravel yourself forever and not reach it. Redefine festive, an unreal something, an eternal street fair, a civic song thrumming in basilic veins. Visitation by the ghost of hot adolescent sex, in colors renounced for brown, bent over like an expressionist willing to take your meaning. I headed south toward the colony of stray cats and mesquite trees, and on top of broken air conditioners, the largest gathering I've seen in months. The wind carried the glaucous stench of herb, torched my passages, an everlasting orange sun, orange with California fire. Black and purple drape drawn, a sweet clot to seize, the over-handled dough dream. Spotted a few people reading on their porches, feeling Pauline missing the Corinthians upon seeing Fortunatus and friends, happy because these men have made up for your absences. And the wind blew an aluminum chair down the main drag, night skidded in real time. What a taste of death. Moments nullified of clairvoyance. Presence is worth years of clarity. A confused time starts to clear up in memory. Imagine a mother-in-law spoiling your life, or rather a spouse's devotion to her, spousal abandon leading to religious ecstasy. She could only die after a cruciform melody, but leaving me to love who I love with street slang, bakla, and brandy latch. And then, while walking and remembering all of the cities, I realized a city can be repellent. It repels me, as in it won't have me. Beyond surface smile and wave, people warned, New York will chew you up and spit you out, but New York loved me. I still exist there because some New Yorkers still love me there, living more fully here in exquisite paradox, in the provinces, far from money, not driven to speak money language, to get golden bones, not drivable into an institution. Too vivid idiom. I became lost in dawn and adobe vespers. Imagine saying the same prayer for 75 years. History gave her hell. A violent urge toward expression inflated her hands, shaken by fear of her sins, every object around her seemingly inflated. Household objects formed a parade of floats, a smiling seam ripper, a winking rolling pin, a place and a people rumored festive, covered in the dust of chaff in the sun. Infamous west wind blew me further from every home, winnowed me from those who would be kin if they could have only permitted me safe growth. Thank you.